I'm good. How are you, my love?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm feeling energized on a Saturday morning. I've done my workout. I've got my blueberry and black currant tea. Feeling good.
I should grab a tea. God damn it. I've got my pump bottle.
Oh, I
We're good to go.
haven't. Yeah, you need hydration. How are you going?
Oh, I'm good. I've been so excited about this chat. I
Me
was
too.
messaging you this morning. I got up so early. I usually sleep in on Saturdays, but I was like, let's do this. I've got a bit to do. I'm feeling good. What
Good.
about you?
I'm good. Yeah, everything's good. And, like as we've been talking, over the past month and a half, 2 months, however long it's just been like one of those things where I think I've finally got into a place where I'm putting myself first and prioritizing my needs and what I need to do and not making excuses. I think I was very in that zone of just making excuses of why I was too tired to go for a walk or work out or whatever. But now that I feel like I'm in this sort of routine, I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling high spirited.
I'm so glad. And it takes time, doesn't it? I think like going in and out of lockdown as well. Like I was talking to someone the other day and I'm like, there's so much I stopped doing after lockdown. Like it sometimes takes you slowing down to be like, shit, okay, I've actually got time to, go within, go for a walk, do all these things that you kind of just forget to do sometimes. And,
100%.
oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time to do it. So yeah, it's so good.
No, it's amazing. And I think going off that, what you said, it's funny because I think I might have said this to you the other week when we were chatting, but last lockdown, I was like, I got into this amazing rhythm. And I remember saying to my partner, if you see me going back to my old ways where I just like fill up my diary and not take care of myself, like pick me up on it. And I made promises to myself of like, keep reading books because I got really back into my reading last lockdown. Obviously there was time. I'm not going to kid myself. There was a lot of time. But nevertheless, it's 10 minutes a day or with meditation or with going for a walk or working out or anything. And then I got back into those bad habits of not putting myself first, saying yes to everything, filling up my time. And so now this lockdown, and I say this with a lot of privilege and I know that, but this lockdown, it's nice to have that again. But I'm going to try and make sure that I do give myself that time after it finishes as well, because we just have to, like the world's shit enough. It's too busy. We need to start doing things for ourselves and actually giving ourselves that time.
Yeah, 100%. And that hustle and grind mentality that you just kind of fall back into, it's horrible. Like as shitty as it is, I think you've got to think of the positives. And like you said, you've got time now to just do some things. We're very privileged. But yeah, slipping back into that hustle and grind mentality, that's something I 100% caught myself on as well. So yeah, trying to just backtrack a bit and be like, okay, we can have a nice little balance of getting shit done, but also resting and recharging and
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We should keep ourselves in check, I think.
We need to keep ourselves accountable.
We do. On that note, I'm so excited. You do understand because I tell you every single time we chat how much I adore you. But for those of you, those people who don't know you, can you just give a quick introduction about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Oh my God, this is like the hardest question sometimes, isn't it? Who are you and what do you do? Okay, so my name is Lauren, and I am a holistic coach and counsellor and a women's empowerment mentor. So I have my own small business. It's called Vivid Heal and Growth, and I started it back in 2019, but about probably 6 to 7 months ago, I actually left my full-time job, and that's when I really dove in, and that's what I've been doing for the past 6 months, and it's been an absolute roller coaster to say the least, but it's been amazing. Yeah.
Look, it's so, and I know I've said this to you before, but it's so brave and it's so inspirational because I think, and we'll get onto sort of the following your truth in a bit, but I think that idea of really breaking out of that norm that society thrusts upon us and that stability, and I'm using air quotes because I think that we've been given this ideology of like the only way to get through life is to follow this sort of trajectory, you know what I mean? And this sort of life progression. And I think the fact that you were able to recognize in yourself that what you were doing wasn't fulfilling you and going out on your own, which is a very brave and hard thing to do, you have to be commended on it. And I can only imagine it must be really hard some days being like, what the hell have I done? But, I can only imagine that's quite normal to feel.
Yeah, 100%. It's a massive change. And I think, especially coming from like a corporate space where it was very rigid, routine structure to now a creative business, like, yes, I have days where I'm like, fuck yeah, let's get this shit done. I've got the creative juices flowing. And there's other days I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what is happening? So yeah, it does take a lot to really keep yourself grounded, but I think there's just absolutely no part of me that looks back and thinks, did I make the wrong decision? Should I have done this? Should I have stayed there? Because I think I've done a lot of work, and we'll definitely talk about this, but I've done a lot of work to really kind of get rid of those. It's a process of unlearning, essentially. It's that process of really working through those scripts and those programs that have kind of been built within us of this is how you should do things, and this is what society tells us we should be doing, or this is what, you know, your family would be comfortable with, you know, being in this secure 9-to-5 role. But yeah, it just was not lighting me up anymore. And I was like, I'm a very soul-led person, and it's been, yeah, a very empowering journey.
That's fantastic to hear. And I love that you say, you know, it doesn't light you up anymore, because I always try and, you know, with any decision I make or what I want to do, I always try and think of, is this going to set my soul on fire? You know, is this going to ignite that flame within me to be like, you know, yep, I definitely want to do this? Or am I just doing it because it's an expectation? And I think sometimes we do things because they are an expectation. I know you and I have spoken about our, you know, family backgrounds and, you know, those sorts of generational traumas and things like that. And I think that it's one of those things where sometimes we do have to check ourselves and make sure that what we're doing actually does, you know, set our souls on fire, and actually does set that, you know, that intensity within us where we just want to create and be inspired and all of that. So I want to speak to you about the journey of deciding, well, thinking about, well, obviously starting your own business while you're still doing in that corporate gig, but that moment where you were just like, you know what, no, enough's enough. It's time for me to do this. What was that whole period of time like?
I still get really like, whew, when I think about it. Yeah. So essentially the work I was doing before I jumped into my business. So I worked for the Department of Justice, and I was working with high risk offenders, both in the community and in prison. So the clientele I was working with, there was a lot of complex trauma, substance abuse, mental health, and criminal offending. So it was a big job. There was a lot of high intensity, high energy. It was a very fast-paced, high-stressed environment, which, you know, it provided me with a lot of amazing things, but it definitely did, and obviously in hindsight now, it got me to a point where I had to really think to myself, is this what I want to do? Is this lighting me up? And the answer was, of course, no. I kind of got to a state where, to be honest with you, it was probably about a year where I started to really dig deep and think, okay, is this something that I can really see myself doing long term? I always knew that I was put on this earth to be of service to others. And it was pretty much a year-long battle with myself, being like, okay, I'm helping people, I'm showing up for these people, but why am I not feeling lit up by this? And, you know, it took me kind of going through some really hectic burnout and compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, all those things that come with working in that field. And yes, it was horrible at the time, but I'm a really big believer in sometimes we do need to get to our lowest point sometimes to actually really reassess and be like, what am I doing? What do I need to be doing differently? How do I redirect this? So yeah, I definitely got to a point where I was feeling stagnant, uninspired, disempowered. And I remember probably the start of, when was it? Start of lockdown last year, I finally got the balls to create like an Instagram account for my business. So I'd already registered my business name because I got all excited. And I was starting to just slowly manifest this idea. And I was like, I don't know where this is going to go, but it just kind of feels right. So I started this Instagram page, and it was really just more so to motivate others and keep people inspired, especially during a really difficult time. And when I started working from home, while I was still working during lockdown, I had moments where I was like, okay, I've got extra time to be working on this little side hustle or whatever you want to call it. And I started to really see the distinction between my energy. I was like, holy shit, I'm like lit up and really, really excited. And it feels so heartfelt and heart-centered when I'm working on this and, you know, creating content for this. But I'm so mentally exhausted from this other role I'm doing. So it started to kind of get me thinking about, am I putting my energy into where I want to, essentially? Yeah, so the battle was difficult because I had those moments where I was like, well, firstly, who the hell am I to leave a secure government role in the middle of a pandemic? And it really started to just spiral into the fear of judgment, fear of what others think, fear of failure as well. It felt realistic to me. It was this intuitive nudge I was getting, but it was so scary. It really was. And yeah, it was that during that period where I started to really get forced to think, okay, I'm needing to now challenge these ideas I've got. Okay, this challenge of, okay, you finished uni, I finished my degree. I was lucky enough to get my foot in the door and have this full-time job, and this is what you're meant to do, right? Like, and then you climb your way up the corporate ladder. It was that kind of mentality that I started to think, no, this isn't my beliefs. I don't believe in this. I feel like I could be doing so much more that does fill up my cup than what I'm doing now. So yeah, a lot of people ask me, when did I know? The moment when I was like, okay, it's time. And I think what I always say to them, the moment that I think the fear turned into excitement, that's when I knew. So there was just like this little switch, and I was just like, nah, it's just like the fire under me, the fire in my belly. I was like, no, I think it's time. And it's funny, I really do think that like the most powerful conversations come from strangers, the impartial people that, you know, they don't need to tell you what you want to hear. And yeah, last year I was doing a life coaching course, and I was speaking with, I got paired up with like a buddy, and I'd never spoke to her before. We only really met once on Zoom, and I had this conversation with her, and we're talking about what we want to do, what lights us up, what we want to do after the course. And I was, you know, talking about all these amazing things I want to do, but there was always a but. I was like, but, you know, I've got this job and it's financially secure, so I don't think I should leave, and all these sort of things. And she kind of just said to me, she called me out on my shit essentially, and she was like, so what's keeping you there? And I was like, it's financially secure, I guess. Like, she's like, okay. She was like, are you in a position to take the leap and take the risk and do it? And I was like, yeah, I think I am. And she said, if me or, you know, a friend came to you with this, what advice would you give them?
Yep.
And I was like, I'd tell them to fucking go for it, obviously. Yep. And I was like, okay, touche, stranger lady. Okay, I get you.
Sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say, sometimes you have the best conversations with strangers. And I remember in my time in customer service, the amount of amazing people I would meet purely from my job, people who I didn't know, and we'd mesh so well on a personal level, even though I'd never spoken to these people before. Sometimes you need strangers to kick you up the arse. And it's true, you know, that idea of like, if I weren't me and somebody came to me with this business plan or idea, or, you know, what would I say to them? We need to be kinder to ourselves, but we're our own harshest critics. And, you know, the fact that somebody was able to give you that nudge that you needed, somebody who you hadn't really chatted to before except for on a Zoom call, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective, doesn't it? So yeah, so I had that conversation, and I got off the call, and I was like, I think I'm going to write my resignation letter. And I waited for my partner to come home, because I was nervous to tell him, but he already knew that. Like, I mean, he lives with me. He saw the absolute roller coaster I went through, and I wasn't myself. I felt like I was just, I didn't really recognize myself. I felt like I lost my humor. My view of the world just completely changed. So it was this moment where I was like, holy shit, I think there's this spark that's coming back. So yeah, he came home, and I was like, okay, I've decided I'm going to do it. Like, stuff it. I'm going to write my resignation. And I remember he said to me, he's amazing. He said, because I was really worried about what he would have thought. Like, I've got a mortgage to pay, this thing. And it was money for me. It was my money mindset. And he essentially just said to me, I would rather you be a broke ass bitch, but super happy, and I'm so down for that. Or I'd rather that than you be, you know, employed and staying in this comfort zone, but you're absolutely miserable. So that was
we love that sort of partner. What an angel. What an angel.
It was just, so I'd already made up my mind, but I think, you know, getting that reassurance from him, it wasn't like me caring about what he thought, but it was like having him in my corner being like,
absolutely. And it's someone you love. It's your partner. It's your life partner. You know, you want to have, even though you're a strong willed, independent person, having that, you know, not acceptance, that's what I'm looking for, that not approval, but you know what I mean? Having that person in your corner, like what you said, having that person in your corner, that's amazing.
100%. Yeah. So that's pretty much, it was this big old battle. And then, it was kind of just like all guns blazing from there.
Amazing. Now, we sort of going back to another conversation or another bit that you said about following your truth. And I think it's that idea that a lot of us sometimes do have to, you know, or we do get sideswept or sidetracked because we feel like there's this expectation of us that society or our family or ourselves have thrust upon us. That idea of following your truth, can you tell me about how important it is to someone like you? Because like you said, you know, you felt like your purpose on this earth was to be, you know, be a support for other people. So can you tell me about how that has become or how it is such an important part of your whole life and your career?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, before that, what I do want to highlight is if there's anyone watching who is resonating with what we're saying, but isn't in a position where they can leave their job, or like, you know, I was obviously really privileged and I had the support of family and a partner who was able to be like, yeah, let's do this, you know. If you're not in that position, create time for your art, make space, create time, and it doesn't have to happen straight away. And, you know, as cliche as it sounds, it's a journey, not a race. So, you know, start chipping away at it, whether it's you just, you know, journaling ideas or, you know, networking and connecting with people to really kind of get that fire going. But yeah, I think following your gut is just, I'm a very intuitive person. I believe my intuition is my superpower. And yeah, it's been everything. I think I've finally moved into this space where I'm able to actually lean more into the discomfort. I mean, when you move from your comfort zone into a space where you're like, okay, I'm leaning so far into this uncomfortable space, but this is where the fun shit happens. This is where I'm going to grow. This is where I'm going to learn. So I feel like this past 6 months has been really crazy because I'm in this a completely different space to where I was 6 months ago, but it's a space where I'm able to kind of nurture this healing and all these things that are coming up for me, because like I said, it's this process of unlearning, and it's a forever process. You're forever going to be going through it and, you know, working out what's yours to carry, what's yours that you're carrying that isn't yours, you know, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, following your intuition and your gut knows, you know, if something is not lighting you up, it's just going to show. Our body has such an interesting way of also telling us when it's time to slow down or when it's time to redirect. I was getting quite sick. I was really in a space mentally where I'd never been before because I was so burnt out and I was so disempowered. I felt like my wings had been clipped. I wasn't expressing myself. I wasn't being creative, and I'm such a creative person. So yeah, just being able to create a space where, yeah, even if you can't leave straight away and really just kind of go out on a limb like I did, create space for you to actually take a step back, take time to breathe and think, how can I start to even just a little bit kind of lean into this area that's really starting to light me up? Hopefully that answers the question.
It does. No, it definitely does. And I think it's amazing advice because, look, at the end of the day, obviously everyone, you know, we do have to check our privilege. And I like the fact that you mentioned that you were in a position to do it. And sometimes people aren't, but you're 100% right. Taking that time, whether it's, you know, an hour a day or half an hour, whatever it is, even just to journal for 10 minutes, which is something that I'm glad you brought it up, because I used to be an avid journaler and I'm a writer by trade. But I haven't journaled in, I think, since COVID last year. It was literally since lockdown last year when things started to slow down. So you've inspired me to start journaling again. So thank you.
I'm so glad.
Just 10 minutes a day. It's nothing. It's nothing. Like, I'll sit there on TikTok for 2 hours a day. I told you, it's my vice.
Shit, it's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
But like we spoke about, I think it was the last time we had a chat and we were talking about the word just and the I am statements, and that's a big one as well. So starting to actually own your shit and start to embody the person that you're wanting to become. So, you know, if you're, for example, a student and you're wanting to become a writer or a creator or whatever it is, when someone asks you what you do, like, instead of saying I'm just a student or I'm just, it's like, I'm a writer. This is something I'm passionate about. Like, you're raising your vibration as you're talking about it. And I think
100%.
that's a huge thing, because we can really keep ourselves small and not want to, I don't know, it's like we don't want to make it real for
It's
ourselves.
imposter syndrome. It's that feeling of
Yeah,
imposter syndrome. It's 100%, because I know that I've
yeah,
definitely gone through it before, and I'm happy that you brought up that, just because, and also going back to the other thing you're talking about having that conversation with a stranger, because a
yeah,
customer at one of the jobs I had was the person who taught me that. A customer, not somebody who I was close to, not something I read. And I introduced myself, and within that time, I obviously unknowingly belittled myself and made myself so small. And I use the word I'm just whatever. And they say never say just, because you're putting yourself in this box. You're lessening who you are. You say I
yeah,
am this. And that was just the biggest light bulb moment for me, because I was like, oh, it's so true, you know.
yeah,
And to you start, you know, you have to start owning your shit, you know, and being like, this is who I am. This is, you know, this is my truth. And I think that as somebody, you know, as a writer, as a blogger, as someone who's been in that sort of space and has done it, and I love what I do, I'm so passionate about what I do, but sometimes I have that moment of imposter syndrome where I'm like, oh,
yeah,
but you know, I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram, or oh, I'm, you know, not getting a lot of views when I post a vlog, or you know what I mean, like.
yeah,
And I'm like, and I think you and I may have spoken about this before, but that shouldn't be a driving force to be the creator that we know we are and want to be. Like, I do this work because I'm genuinely passionate. I speak to amazing people such as yourself because I'm genuinely passionate about that. So that
yeah,
idea of like being this famous blogger or whatever shouldn't be at the forefront, but sometimes it does come into that, you know, sometimes it does come
totally.
into play. And I have that moment of just like, well, I'm not a writer because not a lot of people read my writing, or if they do, they're family and friends. Or I'm not a blogger because I don't get a lot of views. And it's such a toxic way of thinking about it
Oh,
that
yeah,
I think we get caught in that mindset and caught in that trap. And it's about us having to check ourselves again and being
yeah.
like, no, you are this. And if you're passionate about something, follow your fucking instinct and just do it
And
and
own it.
own it.
Own that
100%.
shit.
100%.
And I think a big thing I've realized the past, 6 to 12 months is how important celebrating ourselves is. So, I had a moment, especially when I first started my business, I went from a really structured corporate role to, like I said, a creative space. And I was putting myself in this little box of like, okay, productivity looks like sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours
Yeah.
and smashing out work. No, I'm going to burn myself out. So I had moments where I was like, I need to stop. I need to think about what Lauren 6 months ago to 12 months ago would say if I spoke to her and said, hey, right now I've started my business, I'm doing X, Y, Z. She'd be like, that's fucking amazing. I'm so there for it. But it's that imposter syndrome of not taking time to actually celebrate where we're at and acknowledging our achievements and how far we've come. And yeah, that I am statement is really, really important, because I'm sure, especially in the online space, you connect with people, and people, even random people, will message you and be like, I love what you're doing, it's so inspiring, it's amazing. And you think, here I was 2 hours ago beating myself up saying that
100%.
it's not good enough what I'm doing. So you're the only one putting yourself in this category of not good enough. So, and it's a lot of work that I do with my clients, is that embodiment, is actually owning your shit and stepping into that power and living a life that does feel aligned. And that includes you showing up as the person you already are. It's already within there, but how are we going to actually start to embody it? So important.
100%. I want to speak to you about fatigue, and whether it's, emotional
Yeah,
fatigue, physical fatigue, whatever it might be, because obviously when you are going out on your own, you're a one person show, you have to do every single aspect of your business.
yeah,
Surely that can be quite taxing, because I'm going to assume that you may not have ever done anything like this in the past. So you're very
yeah,
much, I'm sure, learning. And please correct me if I'm wrong. These are just what I'm gauging. But you're doing everything for the first time and trying to grasp who you are as a business person, how you balance being a business person and being an individual, where that
yeah.
fine line is, and all of that. So how do you balance with that sort of fatigue? And what do you do to ensure that you're giving yourself time to just unwind, if at all, because I know sometimes
Yeah,
we can get so excited about being creators that we just sort of, forget that we also need rest and time to breathe
oh
and
yeah.
heal and take the time out. So how do you how do you check yourself when you are feeling that fatigue, and what do you do to make sure that you restore, your energy?
Yeah. So that fatigue is 100% real. And I think I really started to feel it more when I first started, because I just left a role where it was really fast paced, high stress. And I left actually saying, I just wish I had time to just breathe and reconnect and have time to just focus on my art and what I'm doing. And I jumped into that space, but there was this discomfort because I attached so much worth. My worth was attached to how busy I was, how many clients I had, and it was just this really awful imbalance. And I noticed that I started to, it was this process of like riding my own ass, when I'm like, no one's putting pressure on me right now. I don't have managers or supervisors giving me deadlines. Like, I'm doing this to myself. So yeah, I've really had to check in with myself, and it's been a really big process, because yeah, when you're creating all these things, I wasn't turning my brain off ever. Like, the first few months I was so excited about it that I would wake up at 4:30 and get this idea and start typing out, and I'm like, no, like, there needs to be a shut off, there needs to be boundaries, because this is how I got burnt out in the first place in my previous role. And like I said, if you're creating a business, you want it to be long term. You're not thinking, yeah, let's just dip my toe in here and it'll, see me out 6 months. No, we need to look after ourselves, because it is a lot of pressure. I feel like my hair's just going to turn grey and fall out by the end of the year if I keep doing this shit to myself.
My hair's already turning grey.
Oh my God, I reckon I got a few as well. But yeah, I really do think it's about knowing when to call it as well, knowing when it's time to, especially in the online space as well. It can be really, really exhausting trying to build this business for yourself and comparing to others, because in the online space you'll follow people that are doing similar things, and it can be inspiring to an extent, but there's always a part of you that will see them doing something and you're like, shit, should I be doing that? Why am I not at that stage? So knowing your triggers is a really big thing, and it's something that I've really had to kind of work out what my triggers are. How do I know when it's time to actually switch off? When I start getting moody, snappy, when I'm not making time for myself and my relationships, I'm not showing up properly, like, okay, yeah, maybe it's time I need to step back. So, and at the end of the day, someone, one of my business mentors said to me, your business is your spiritual awakening. And I thought I'd already been through this spiritual awakening, but it is so true, because I think you're always on this journey. But when you start your business, it's like your baby, and it's your creation. It's a part of you. It's a piece of you, and it's your expression. And it's really daunting putting it out there, knowing that it feels so sacred. You're like, this is my creation.
And that people will pick it apart, or potentially pick it apart. Yeah.
It's really scary. And it's also hard when you've come from a space where you've got supervisors that can, look over your stuff and be like, yeah, good, or maybe change that. Like, no, you really need to trust yourself and trust that what you're doing feels aligned and feels right. So yeah, really checking in with yourself. And I know we'll probably have a chat about motivation as well, and what's going to keep us motivated. I got you. But one of those things is definitely having some sort of a mentor, or creating a little network so you can talk to people, because it can be really, really lonely going out on your own. Like, it's really inspiring and amazing and empowering at times, but there's other times where I'm like, holy shit, like, it's me, myself and I need to talk to other people that understand where I am, because it's a wild ride, to say the least.
And it sort of goes back to that idea of just being kind to ourselves, because we are our own worst critics, and it's like, I feel like we keep, circling back to it, but it's so true. Excuse me. We are our own worst critics, and we always, I know from me personally, I'm always the person who sits there being like, you should be doing more. You should be doing this. Why are you being lazy? Even sick days. I was so sick a couple of weeks ago, so unwell. And I was sitting on the couch and I was just like, far out, like, there's so much I could be doing. And I had to be like, stop being an idiot. Stop being an idiot. You're unwell. Your body needs and deserves rest. It needs to be looked after.
Surrender to it.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And it's like we attach this, like, if I surrender to resting, this equals less productivity, but like
laziness.
It's like, no, rest is just as productive. We're not talking about like sitting on our ass for 2 weeks and doing sweet F all, no. But yeah, like how are we going to show up for ourselves or our business if we're burnt out? And, you know, like I said, I've been burnt out many times before, and it's horrible. And it really stems from you not checking in with yourself a bit earlier and seeing those warning signs.
Absolutely. And I think that burnout, you know, I laugh about it now, but I'd go through like a periodic 6-month burnout. So it would be like, you know, every 6 months I'd have this moment where I just completely like almost like lose all inhibition, and I'd just go nuts for like a week.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, okay, I'm back at it now. And then I'd just put myself back in that situation, and it would just be rinse and repeat. And I think that's why, again, completely checking my privilege, because I was in a situation where I was, you know, in a safe home, and I had, you know, I was getting JobKeeper at the time because, you know, obviously everything that was going on, but I was able to stop and reflect about what was important in my life, what I wanted to put my time towards, who I wanted to put my time towards, which is really, really important, because time is currency. Our time is currency. And I think that's something, somebody told me that, and I was just like, holy shit, it's so true. Because, you know, I used to be like, I have to fill up every single day with everything. And my weekends would be like, I'd see someone in the morning, someone in the afternoon, someone at night, go out, rinse and repeat. And then I'd just be that cycle of being burnt out. And during COVID, during lockdown, I had that moment of being still and being like, oh, I don't actually need to see these people twice a week. I don't actually need to see them once a month. Like I can just sort of speak to people, check in with people. And again, I understand that I was privileged in that way because mentally I was in a good place, emotionally I was in a good place, and I understand that not everyone was. But I think that we just need to just stop and sometimes, like we keep saying, check in with ourselves and understand that we also need to have that time to restore and recuperate and just be still.
100%. Yeah. And I love how you said time is currency, and I said time and energy as well, because, you know, I like to view energy as currency. Do I have enough to give to this person? You know, if I give this to you, am I going to have any left for myself?
100%.
So I always check
it's emotional labor.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the positive thing with lockdown is, having time to not, because, you know, there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time constantly planning things and having events to go to. And sometimes it's almost a distraction. It's like you're not giving yourself any time to just sit with yourself and check in. How are you going? You know? If there's this constant energy exchange and we're absorbing all of this craziness, and, you know, COVID is a difficult time because what I find most draining is how often people talk about it as well. Like, you know, even just going to the dog park, like people love a good chat about COVID, and I'm like, oh my God, it's killing me, you know? It's really important to check in and actually having those boundaries, saying no, sorry, I'm busy, turning off my phone, turning off social media, having a break. It's just, key.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for bringing up motivation. Ding, ding, ding. Beautiful segue. This wasn't pre-planned. This wasn't pre-organized.
No, we haven't spoken before this. I actually have never met somebody
before. It's so lovely to meet you. Being motivated, staying motivated, and that idea of just motivation in general, you know, it's really romanticized and everything like that. And it's funny because I remember, like, especially with gym and things like that, you know, when I'm completely motivated, I'm so in the zone and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But there are times, days, weeks where I'm like, I cannot be bothered. Like, I'm just using gym as an example because it's the first thing.
Yeah, of course.
Or even like my business. Yeah, it is. Or even my business, you know, I'll go through stages where I'm just like, I'm going to keep creating. And then I'll go through months where I just don't touch it, don't look at it, because I'm like, if I look at it, I'm going to feel obliged to do something. I don't have the motivation to do it. Therefore, I'm going to put it in the too hard basket. So I guess where I'm leading to is, on a personal level, how do you stay motivated? And when you're not motivated, how do you deal with that? Because I know that being, like I said, being motivated, I'm sure for you, you can relate. You feel elated and just like, I'm so excited to do all these things. But then it's also that idea of motivation versus discipline. So I'll sort of backtrack. How do you stay motivated when you're in that space? But then when you're not motivated, how are you treating yourself in that space?
Yeah, it's when you're in the creative space or you've got your own business and you're needing to, create things. It's really difficult because, yeah, sometimes you go through those stages where you're like, oh my God, I got this, I'm on a roll, and you're like smashing things out. And there's other times where because I know a lot of people, they'll like batch create content, and then they'll, you know, every so often put things out there, which is great for time management and everything. But the issue with that, especially with my kind of business, is it's all energy, you know. So I think they say it's like business is like 80% energetics and 20% strategy. So if you're putting things out there, but it doesn't even feel aligned to you. So there's times I'll create something and I go to put it out there and I'm like, I don't feel that happy and, you know, like motivated today. I actually feel like shit today. I'm only showing up because I feel like I have to. So I'm trying to be a lot more mindful and intuitive and in tune with how and why I'm showing up and how often. And, you know, I'm sure you all have people maybe on Instagram or on social media where they're just always there all the time. And sometimes you can just sense that energy of like, girl, you look fucking burnt out, like chill out, go rest, you know? So yeah, I think with motivation, there's a few things I actually wrote some notes because like I came up with a few things and I just...
We love a prepared queen, yeah.
So the first thing I wrote, and I did mention it before, is staying connected. So having a network of people, whether it's fellow business owners or people who just get it or people that make you feel really happy. If you take a break and you have a chat with them, pick up the phone, it's so important because it can be really, really lonely. But people that are also empowering, they're like, you're fucking doing an amazing job, because there's days where you don't feel like showing up and you don't feel like you're actually maybe doing that good, or you're being hard on yourself because you've told yourself you want to be here, but you're only here today, or whatever it is. So yeah, having a little network of people, because, you know, so often people are like, that thing that you spoke about the other day, like that really hit home for me, that I really needed that. And that's the kind of stuff where you're like, oh my God, what I'm doing is really like impacting people. It's helping people. So definitely staying connected. Another thing that I think is just key, and we mentioned it as well, is not letting your self-care slip. So, sorry, that's my dog. No, he licked my toe before, and I was trying not to like make a fuss as he was doing it. I'm like, oh my God, no.
This is chill. You can laugh if you want.
Is this PG or don't let self-care slip. So yeah, if you know, okay, today I need to do X, Y, Z before I jump on that Zoom call or show up or do whatever, do it. Like, do what you need to do to pave the way for a day where you feel energized. And yes, there's going to be days where you don't feel like it, and there's days where you do need to rest. But the moment that we kind of let our self-care slip, especially when you're in a business where you're working with other people, you're connecting with other people, you're having these conversations, and in the counseling space, you're helping people who are in a space where they're probably not motivated. So really, really important to keep up that self-care. Another thing that I've really started to embody is kind of balancing the feminine and masculine energies. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, feminine energy, everyone's got a mix of feminine, masculine energies. So things like structure, routine, that kind of stuff is more the masculine energies. So it sounds weird. Go look up the concept if you guys haven't heard of it, but it's just an interesting way to kind of see where our energy is kind of leaning towards. So when I was, say, working at the department, I felt like I was really, really heavy in my masculine energy. There was too much structure and routine, and I didn't feel like there was enough flow and really, so the feminine side of things is really allowing yourself to flow and rest and be creative and express. So trying to find a nice balance of that, that's something that I've really been mindful of. Keeping yourself like knowledgeable and educated and accountable through like enroll yourself in like workshops or programs or short courses, because, you know, when we start a business, sometimes we think that we need to know everything. Like, okay, I'm meant to be the expert of this topic. Like, no, we need to continue to grow. We don't just stop there and that's it. So, you know, if you're financially strapped as well, there's some amazing like free short courses that you can do just to kind of, just keep yourself kind of motivated and connect with other people that are doing similar things to you. What else do we have? Healthy boundaries between, so I kind of say it's good to have a balance between working in the business and then working on the business. So, you know, you might have weeks where you have clients or you've got a really full week of connecting with people. That's you working in the business. And then I will always try and schedule a week where I'm working on the business. So instead of jam packing my next week with just face-to-face things or clients or whatever, because it's a lot of energy, having that week to actually just do some admin stuff or just do a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, working out whether you're working in or on the business, and remembering that as much as your business is your baby and it feels like it's a part of you, yes, of course, but remembering that you're two separate entities. I think the moment you start to just completely just attach yourself to your business, that's when I think the fatigue starts to happen, and it doesn't really feel healthy. Yes, this is a little part of your creation, but this isn't you, this isn't everything. So you always need to savor a piece of yourself for just you or your family or your friends, because if we're just putting everything into the business, and I'm sure we know people who have worked themselves into the ground owning a business, and it's not healthy. So yeah, and the last thing I would say, and it's a huge one, is blocking out the haters. Because it's really hard. We're going to be spending most of the time hating on ourselves and being really hard, and that imposter syndrome creeping in. But, you know, there's always going to be people, I even get it now, people who are like, so how's the business going? Are you like making money yet? Do you have any clients yet? And you can feel when it's that, there's care versus curiosity, and there's also people that are kind of, they're wanting to make themselves feel better about staying in their comfort zone. So I'm trying to just really like take it with a grain of salt and just be like, yeah, it's going great, thank you so much. Like not feeding into that energy, because, you know, a huge thing I worked on is the fear of judgment from others. Like I left a very clinical area to go into something very holistic, and people, there's definitely big judgment there. People don't have to say it. I can see it on their faces when I talk about what I do. But like I said, owning your shit, like that, this is what you do, and they don't need to be happy with it. If they love it, great. If they don't, even better. See you later.
Each to their own. Each to their own. You know, it's one of those things where I think, you know, sometimes as well, I catch myself thinking, what will other people think of me? But it's that idea of, you know, understanding that everyone's got their own thing. And when people do approach situations in that sort of patronizing curiosity sort of way, that's definitely more of a reflection on them rather than, you know, your business or what you're trying to achieve. So when people show that they're not encouraging or, you know, inspired, because it doesn't take a lot to be supportive. And that's what I've realized, you know, it really doesn't take a lot to be a supportive person or supportive friend. And I've got people that I'm not really quote unquote close with, but who, when I post something, you know, on my business, they're just like, they'll interact with it. They'll send me messages, like you said.
Yeah.
And that's what makes my heart so full. Whereas I've got people who, you know, are considered close-ish friends, and, you know, they don't interact with it at all. And for me, it's like, it doesn't cost anything to be like, I'm proud of you, well done, or, you know, whatever it is. And I think it's like, so having those sorts of interactions with people, I think as well helps with, mentally for me, I sort of remember these sorts of, you know, instances, and I'm just like, okay, I'll just keep that in the back of my mind. Yeah.
It's easy to attach yourself to that, and that worth. And, you know, there's people who, I still have people in my life who I'm quite close with, and I can tell they're uncomfortable to even ask about it, because they're uncomfortable with this leap that I've taken. And, you know,
because they don't understand.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you know, a big motivator for what I did was, I had a moment where I thought to myself, I don't want to be that person that, you know, 2, 5, 10 years down the track looks back and is constantly talking about shoulda, coulda, didn't. And that was a huge motivation. So I think you need to remind yourself that. So if you do feel a little bit triggered by someone who you think, you know, I wish you did show me a little bit of, you know, love or support, give that to yourself. Like, put all that energy back into yourself.
Absolutely.
You've got it. Yeah.
Absolutely. My last question for you, my darling, is, what is a piece of advice or some wisdom that you've gotten that has stuck with you now forever?
That's a big question. I think it sounds really quite cliche, but I think it's really just about doing what makes you happy. I think it's really, really easy to live a life in alignment with what we think we should do, how our family's done things. And I know we've spoke about the expectations of the family, or, you know, coming from like a woggy background. I've been speaking with my hands this whole time, so obviously obviously Italian
ingrained into us.
Yeah. But yeah, I think someone once said to me, like, as scary as it is, it's actually really exciting being that person to kind of, how do you word it, like breaking that kind of, is it generational cycle, or like just breaking the cycle, doing something differently. And that cliche thing of like, do you want to fit in or do you want to stand out? And, you know, and it's not about me standing out and being on this world stage, but it's about me doing something different because it feels authentic to me. So, you know, if there is something you want to do and automatically we're either judging ourselves or we're thinking about what our family is going to think, or our loved ones, or whatever, if it's something that lights you up, it feels authentic, and yeah, we don't need to care what other people think. They'll deal with it. If they're along for the ride, amazing. If they're not, like we said, it's usually a reflection of where they're at, and there's a reason for that discomfort. So do what makes you happy. And if you're in a position where you're not feeling yourself and you're feeling like a watered down version of yourself, or you're keeping yourself small, check in with yourself and think, you know, how can I redirect this? How can I move down a path that's a lot more soul-led and that feels aligned,
a lot more authentic. You know how obsessed I am with you, and you know how I can just talk to you forever. And I'm just, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so thankful and grateful that we had this time. And I did connect with you because I know we just met on social media and we still haven't met in person, but I love the fact that we pretty much talk every day and connect with each other and support one another. So I'm, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for chatting. And I always feel so high after I'm on this spiritual high after I speak to you. So I'm just so obsessed, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, my love.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to chat. And
of course, it's an honor, a privilege.
The connections you make on this journey are insane, and this is a connection I'm so glad that I've made, and it feels very, very, it was meant to be.
It feels pure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Have a beautiful weekend.
You too.
See you. Bye.